I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 7 years. We had a pretty normal life, or so I thought. We had a kid, a decent house, and I worked my ass off to keep everything stable. Lisa always seemed a bit high maintenance, but I figured that was just her personality. Honestly, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Things started feeling off a few months ago, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. She became more aggressive, more dismissive, and she started working late more often. At first, I just shrugged it off. She's a teacher, I told myself. Maybe she's just busy preparing for exams or grading papers. But then little things started to add up. Her phone would be hidden more often, and she'd get defensive whenever I asked who she was texting. She also started dressing differently. More revealing, more provocative. She'd wear tight dresses and heels when she went out, which was unusual because she used to be pretty modest. I thought maybe she was just trying to keep things lively, maybe she was bored. I tried talking to her about it, but Lisa is the kind of woman who will lie her ass off if she feels cornered. She'd brush everything off with a smirk or a snide comment, telling me I was paranoid or imagining things. Then came the argument that set everything in motion. I found her phone one night after she went to bed. I wasn't snooping. I just needed to see if she was still hiding stuff. I saw messages from a number I didn't recognize, but the name was John, and the texts were all about sneaking around, planning meetings after hours. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't even hesitate. I looked through her messages. Things got more explicit, and I saw her talking about missing him, about their after-hours sessions in classrooms, even mentioning the school cameras caught them sometimes. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. My wife, whom I trusted completely, was screwing around with our son's assistant principal. I'd heard rumors about her being difficult, but I never thought she'd be capable of this kind of betrayal. It was like a punch to the gut, knowing she'd been lying right in my face for months. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I also knew I needed to get proof first. I didn't want her to deny it or spin some bullshit story. I needed solid evidence, so I started digging. I followed her during her supposed late meetings. I parked outside the school after hours and saw her sneaking into an empty classroom with John. They stayed in there for a long time. I saw her kissing him, touching him, like they were having sex or about to. I even caught the moment on my phone. Horrible as it sounds, I couldn't look away. It was like my world was crashing down all at once. I'd never felt so betrayed, so humiliated. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with someone I trusted to be around our kid every day. It was a gut punch I didn't know I could survive. The worst part was how she lied about everything. When I confronted her the next day, she had the nerve to act like I was overreacting, that I was jealous or paranoid. She said I was imagining things, that she was just friends with John. She told me I was crazy, that I didn't understand how busy she was, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She called me insecure, said I was being unreasonable. I told her I knew the truth, that I'd seen the videos, the texts, everything. But she just laughed, brushed it off, and said I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. I felt so many things at once: anger, sadness, confusion. I couldn't believe she'd do this to me, to our family. I'd always thought she was the woman I could trust with my life. Turns out I was dead wrong. That night I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. The fact that she could lie so convincingly, act like she was innocent, hurt worse than the betrayal itself. I knew then that I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. I just knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The following days after the confrontation were a blur. I was stuck in this limbo of rage and despair. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in that classroom with John, the way she kissed him, the way she touched him like she actually wanted to be with him. It was like a virus eating away at me. I kept replaying everything I found, trying to piece it together, trying to understand how my wife, the woman I loved, could do something so monstrous. I decided I needed more proof. I wasn't about to let her brush this off again. So I started sneaking around just like she did. I parked outside the school a few more times, watching her come and go. My gut told me she was still seeing him, still sneaking around behind my back. The thing is, Lisa has always been manipulative. She's got that bitchy attitude that she uses to get her way, and she's a master at lying convincingly. When I pressed her about her late nights, she'd throw her head back and say I was being paranoid, that she needed those extra hours to prep for her classes, to grade papers. She'd tell me I was insecure, that I needed to trust her, but I knew better now. I saw her in that classroom more than once with John. I saw her laughing, leaning into him like they were a secret couple, and it tore me apart. The betrayal, the lying, it all made me feel like I was living in someone else's nightmare. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see it coming. I thought we had a good marriage, but apparently I was blind. Then came the night I decided I'd had enough. I set up a hidden camera in the living room, nothing fancy, just a small one I bought online. I wanted to catch her in the act if she was planning to lie her way out of it again. That night I waited, heart pounding, for her to get home from her late meeting. Sure enough, she came in, acting all innocent like she hadn't been sneaking around with John. I pretended to be asleep, but I had my camera running. What I saw was damning. She slipped into the bedroom, took off her clothes, and then, right on cue, I saw her pick up her phone and text him. I couldn't believe it, seeing her so brazen. She was actually doing all this right in front of me, 2 feet away. She thought I was knocked out, but I was wide awake. Watching her lie to my face, knowing what she was doing behind my back, was like stabbing myself repeatedly in the chest. It confirmed everything I'd suspected. I finally had undeniable proof. That's when the cold, rational part of me started to harden. I knew I had to act. The next day I sat her down again, cameras rolling in my head. I told her I had caught her. I told her I knew about her affair with John, that I had the videos, the texts, everything. She looked stunned at first, then furious. She denied everything, of course. She called me paranoid, accused me of stalking her, said I was crazy. But I wasn't having it anymore. I told her I was done with her lies, that I wanted a divorce, and that I was going to make sure she paid for what she did. Her reaction was everything I expected: bitchy, dismissive, full of that "how dare you question me" attitude. She said I was overreacting, that she'd never cheat, that I was just jealous and insecure. She spat that she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt our family. But I knew better now. I knew the woman I'd loved was gone. She was just a liar, a manipulator who used her charm and bitchiness to get what she wanted. I was sick and tired of her games. I realized I had to get out of this for my own sanity. By then, I started thinking about revenge. Not some petty thing, but something that would really shake her up. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, what it was like to be betrayed and humiliated the way I had been. I wasn't sure exactly how yet, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just walk away and pretend like this never happened. I needed her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't going to be her pushover anymore. That's when I started planning how to make her regret everything she'd done. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning my next move. I knew I couldn't confront her directly again, without risking her shutting down or spinning some story that would make me look like the crazy one. I needed to make her feel just as betrayed as I felt, maybe even more. I wanted her to understand that I knew everything and that I wasn't going to take her bullshit anymore. I started by gathering more evidence, more proof of her infidelity. I installed a few more hidden cameras around the house, mostly in the bedroom and living room, and set up a voice recorder in my car. I needed to be ready for anything. I also dug into her phone, installing some tracking apps that let me see her messages and location without her knowing. I didn't want to blow my cover until I was sure I had everything I needed. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act of innocence, throwing around her typical bitchy attitude whenever I pressed her about her whereabouts. She'd roll her eyes, call me paranoid, accuse me of mistrusting her. But I didn't care anymore. I knew her game. I knew she'd continue lying until I had enough proof to put her in a corner. One night, I finally caught her in the act. I was sitting in my car outside her office after hours, waiting to see if she'd slip up again. Sure enough, around 10:30 p.m., she texted John. I managed to record the entire conversation, her whispering, her giggles, her telling him to meet her in the back of the school. I couldn't believe how blatant she was being. This wasn't some innocent affair. This was a full-blown betrayal, right under my nose. The next day, I confronted her again, this time with all the evidence. She was furious, of course, but I wasn't backing down. I played her the recordings, the videos, the texts. Her face went from angry to stone-cold white. She tried to deny everything, called me a psycho for spying, said I was ruining our marriage, but I'd had enough. I told her I knew about everything, that I was done pretending. That's when she snapped. Her bitchy attitude turned vicious. She spat at me that I was just a jealous, insecure loser who couldn't satisfy her, that she only cheated because I was boring and distant. I felt my blood boil. How dare she blame me for her own betrayal? I told her she could pack her shit and leave if she wanted, that I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I saw in her eyes that she knew she was cornered. Her mask was slipping. I decided I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. I started to dig into her phone and her emails, looking for anything I could use to really hurt her. What I found was even worse: sexually explicit messages with John, plans to meet up over the weekend, and even pictures she'd sent him during her late nights. I felt a sick mix of disgust and rage. She'd been lying to me, sneaking around, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I realized she didn't care about us, about our son, or what her lies were doing to our family. All she cared about was her own selfish pleasure. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I told her I was calling a lawyer and filing for divorce, that I was done with her lies, her bitchy attitude, her cheating. She tried one last time to manipulate me, crying crocodile tears, twisting her face into a pout, calling me crazy. But I didn't care. I had all the proof I needed, and I was finally ready to walk away from the nightmare she'd created. The day I told her I was leaving was one of the most satisfying moments of my life, not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because I finally felt like I was regaining some control. The look on her face, that mixture of anger and fear, was priceless. I knew I'd hurt her, but honestly, she deserved everything coming to her. I was done being her punching bag, her doormat, her fool. I was done trusting her lies. I knew I'd made the right choice, even if it still hurts like hell. It's a brutal lesson in how the person you love can sometimes turn out to be the very thing you despise most. After I made the decision to leave, the whole process became a whirlwind. I called up a lawyer that same afternoon and set things in motion. Divorces aren't fun at the best of times, but when you're dealing with a spouse who's been lying and cheating right under your nose, it's even worse. Lisa was furious. She threw her usual hissy fit, calling me crazy, saying I was stalking her and that I was destroying her reputation. She kept insisting that she and John were just friends, that there was nothing going on, and that I was just overreacting. Honestly, I didn't care what she said anymore. The proof was all over the place: videos, texts, recordings, and I'd made up my mind. In the days that followed, she ramped up her bitchy attitude. She'd walk around the house throwing shade, acting like the victim, and trying to manipulate everyone around her. But the problem was, everyone knew she was lying. I made sure to gather all the evidence I could: screenshots of her explicit messages, recorded calls, even some photos she'd taken of herself with John. I wanted to make it clear that I wasn't just leaving because I was angry. I was leaving because she betrayed me, betrayed our family, and I wasn't going to be a part of that anymore. The hardest part was dealing with our son, Jake. He was only 10, but he already sensed that something was wrong. Lisa's attitude changed around him. She tried to pretend everything was fine, but I could see the cracks in her facade. I explained to Jake that Mommy and I were going to live in different houses now, that it wasn't his fault, and that sometimes grown-ups make bad choices. It broke my heart to see him upset, but I knew I had to be honest with him even if it hurt. I also made sure he knew that I still loved him and that I was going to be there for him no matter what. Meanwhile, Lisa was doing everything she could to turn the tables. She started calling me names, accusing me of cheating or being overly paranoid. She even tried to turn Jake against me, telling him I was crazy and controlling. It was hard to watch her manipulate our kid like that, but I stayed calm. I knew I had the truth, and I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I kept my distance, let the legal process run its course, and focused on getting out of the mess she created. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I also started thinking about how to rebuild my life. I knew I'd need therapy, maybe some counseling to work through the feelings of betrayal and hurt. I also realized I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. She was a different person, a bitchy, manipulative woman who was willing to destroy her own family. For a quick fling, that realization was almost more painful than the betrayal itself, but I also knew I had to let go of the anger, at least a little, to move on. I didn't want to be that guy who let bitterness consume him. One thing I learned from all this is that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. Lisa had lied so convincingly, so constantly, that I lost all faith in her. I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, bitchy woman who thought she could get away with anything. And honestly, I felt sick thinking about how many other lies she'd told, how many times she'd manipulated people around her. It made me realize that sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away and leave the toxic person behind. That's what I was finally doing, taking control and starting over, even if it hurt like hell. The divorce process dragged on longer than I expected, but I stayed firm. Every court hearing, every meeting with the lawyers just reinforced what I already knew: I was better off without her. Lisa's bitchy attitude only got worse. She was bitter and spiteful, trying to drag me through every possible humiliation. She would call me names, accuse me of sabotage, even tried to make herself the victim, saying I was the one who caused all the pain. Honestly, I'd never hated anyone as much as I hated her in those moments, but I also knew I had to stay focused. I couldn't let her get the upper hand, not anymore. What stung the most was seeing her try to manipulate our son, Jake. Tell him stories about how Daddy was trying to ruin her, how I was crazy and controlling, just to turn him against me. I could see the confusion and hurt in Jake's eyes, and it made me furious. I sat him down one afternoon, told him that Mommy was upset but that I loved him more than anything, and that all I wanted was for him to be happy. I promised him that no matter what happened between me and Lisa, I would always be there for him, that he didn't have to pick sides. That was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, but I knew honesty was the only way forward. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to spin her narrative. She'd send me angry texts, calling me all sorts of names, accusing me of spying and stalking. She even accused me of cheating, which was laughable because I'd been too broken to even look at another woman during all of this. Honestly, my focus was on getting out of the mess she created and protecting my son from her venomous lies. I was done with her antics. I stayed civil in court, played it cool, and let the legal system do its job. Every document, every piece of evidence I had collected was like a sword in my hand, and I was ready to cut her loose for good. The real turning point came when I finally got the official divorce papers. I signed them without hesitation, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. I'd lost the woman I thought I loved, but I'd also regained some dignity. I realized I'd been living in her shadow for too long, ignoring the signs of her betrayal until it was almost too late. That night I sat alone in my new apartment, staring at the empty walls and reflecting. I knew I had a long road ahead, working on myself, healing from the pain, and figuring out what life looks like without her. Looking back, I learned a few hard lessons. First, trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. Second, sometimes the only way to truly move on is to cut out the poison in your life, no matter how much it hurts. And third, no matter how manipulative someone might be, the truth always finds a way to come out. I've come to accept that Lisa was never the person I thought she was, just a bitchy, selfish woman capable of deception and betrayal. The pain still lingers, but I know now that I'll get through it. I'll rebuild and I'll be stronger for it. The one thing I want to tell anyone in a similar situation is this: never ignore the signs, listen to your gut, and remember, you deserve better than lies and betrayal. Now that I've finally moved on, I spend a lot of time thinking about everything I went through. Honestly, I'm not the same guy I was before. That betrayal changed me, made me more cautious, more guarded, but it also made me realize what I want out of life. I don't need someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. I want honesty, loyalty, and respect, and I refuse to settle for anything less. Looking back, I see how blindly I trusted Lisa. I was so caught up in the idea of our perfect life that I ignored all the warning signs. I wish I had listened to my instincts sooner. Maybe I could have saved myself a lot of heartbreak. But at the same time, I know now that I can survive this kind of pain. I've learned to stand tall, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. For anyone out there going through something similar, I'd say this: trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs just because you don't want to believe the worst. When something feels off, dig deeper. Be honest with yourself, even if the truth hurts. And don't be afraid to walk away if that's what you need to do. No one deserves to be betrayed and humiliated like I was, but I also learned that the only way to truly heal is to face it head on. I still have scars, sure, but I also have hope that one day I'll find someone who truly deserves my trust, someone who won't lie to me or play games. I've realized that I am better off alone than with someone who doesn't value me. That's the biggest lesson of all. Never settle for someone who treats you like an option or a fool. Stand up for yourself, protect your heart, and don't be afraid to walk away from the toxicity. Because in the end, the only person who can truly fix your happiness is yourself.